Now let's understand in brief about asexual reproduction. We can say that the types of asexual reproduction. As I've already discussed that it is a type of reproduction in which only one parent is involved. So this is basically done by normally if we see that plant will be able to reproduce by two things, or we can say that two parts. One is the vegetative part, another one is the reproductive part. Reproductive part is the flower which is used or which is useful in the case of sexual reproduction, but in the case of asexual reproduction, plant reproduce by the vegetative parts, which are like stems, roots, leaves. So these are the different vegetative parts, and plant do this process by this thing. Now the types of asexual reproduction that we are going to discuss in this chapter are vegetative propagation, budding, fragmentation and spore formation. So let's move to our next topic. We are going to discuss these four one by one and how these are useful. That also we are going to discuss. Now first of all, let's discuss what is vegetative propagation. Now as the word says vegetative, now here the plant do the reproduction by the vegetative part, or we can say that the vegetative part is formed or processed into a new plant. Now what are the vegetative parts? Basically, as I have already discussed, that these are roots, stems, buds, leaves, etc. Basically we can say that the parts of the plant itself are the vegetative parts. Now since this reproduction is through the vegetative part, this is known as vegetative propagation. Propagation means transfer. By this process we can easily transfer the part of the plant, like cut that and transfer it to another plant, and that is how new plants also can be formed by this type of vegetative propagation. Now what happens and what are the different examples? First of all, from the stems, as I have said that in this type of reproduction vegetative parts are used. Now from the stems, what are the different examples or what are the different plants that can be reproduced? That is onion, garlic and tulips. So these can be grow through the stems itself. Now second is bryophyllum, that is from the leaves. Now bryophyllums, what they have is they have small buds present on the leaves. Now that bud, what they do is they develop into a new organism or new bryophyllum, and once they get proper growth, they detach from that leaf and forms a new bryophyllum. Similarly, from roots, sweet potatoes and dahlia are grown. So that is how the plants reproduce through vegetative propagation. Now what are the major advantages of vegetative propagation, or why vegetative propagation is preferred in most of the cases? That is just because in this we get the exact copy of the parent plant. Now if I need some characters which need to be exactly similar to the parent, so what I'll do is I'll cut that part itself for the reproduction process, so that the plant or the offspring that is produced will be of the same characters that the parent have, right? Now in this a large number of offsprings can be produced. Like in the case of sexual reproduction, only one kind of plant is grown, or only one plant is grown, but in this case large number of offsprings are produced. Why? Because so many buds can be seen in this case. Stems, we know that there are many stems in the plant. Roots are also there many number, and because of that what we can do is we can easily use all the vegetative parts and grow them into a large number of offspring. Now if a plant has a disease in certain part, what I can do is I can take the other part of the plant which is disease free. So like that, because of this vegetative propagation, what we can do is we just can grow a plant which is free from the diseases, or we can propagate a plant which is disease free, so that we get a yield which is useful to us. Now the next thing is the plants that is produced by this method, they take a less time to grow, and because of that, as they take less time to grow, they bear fruits and flowers earlier, and that also becomes a very useful thing as this is the major or main advantage of the vegetative propagation. So that is how this vegetative propagation becomes very important for the farmers or for the people who are dealing with the plants which reproduce through the vegetative propagation for their benefit itself. So let's move to another type of asexual reproduction, that is budding. Now, how budding occurs is by the bud formation. Now, this type of reproduction is basically seen in the case of fungus-like organism, which is yeast. Now, how yeast do this reproduction? From the parent itself, a bud is formed on the parent itself, which is like a small projection. And once this bud properly grows into a new organism, that bud detaches from the parent and becomes a new individual. So that is how the budding formation takes place. In this, as I have already said, the bud grows, and once it grows properly, like all the proper growth happens, after that it detaches from the parent and then form a new yeast cell. Now what happens here? When we see a yeast cell, how we can see that they reproduce in a major amount? Like we can take yeast from the market itself. We get a powder of yeast. Now what you can do is take that yeast and add it in a beaker, and there add some sugar proper for its nutrition process, and after some time, like half an hour, after keeping it in a proper conditions, proper growth condition, warm condition where it can grow properly, what you can do is after half an hour, what you'll see, take a small sample from that beaker itself and study it under the microscope. What you'll see, the number or amount of organism, the yeast cells have divided or increased in number after this process. So basically we can say that yeast grow in very less amount of time, and in major amount in formation of the buds. By the formation of the buds, it forms a new organism in less amount and in major number, or we can say that in more number. So that is how the budding occurs. Next type of reproduction or asexual reproduction is fragmentation. Now fragmentation itself, the word itself says the organism forms a new organism, or we can say that the parent forms the offspring by the fragments. Now what happens in this case, the adult organism breaks into two or more pieces, and here once the adult is divided into two or more pieces, the role of adults goes off. Now here each and every piece develop into a new organism. Like if the organism is divided into three parts, all the three parts will divide into a new organism, or they properly grow into a new organism. This type of reproduction is basically seen in the case of Spirogyra. So here you can see in the image how the organism has divided into two parts, and these two parts again will properly develop into a new individual. So that is how the fragmentation takes place into the organisms. Next type of reproduction is spore formation. This type is basically done by the spores. Now how this happens, like these spores are asexual reproductive bodies which are present. Now under the favorable conditions, what happen in this case, like here in the image you can see that in the case of spore hyphae, what happens, the sporangium keeps on producing into the ball-like structure, and once all the spores are formed, what happens, the sporangium burst. And as a result, as these spores are very light in weight, what happens, with the help of wind or other organisms, like attaching to the bodies of other organisms, these spores are spread into other places. Now once they go or fall on some place, and under favorable condition, what happens, these spores germinate and they develop a new individual. So that is how this reproduction is done through the spore formation. This type of reproduction is basically seen in the case of fungus and ferns, and the type of seeds or the type of spores are basically winged shape, or we can say that of very lightweight, and because of that, they, with the help of wind, they can go from one place to another easily. These spores are basically present in all around the air, and wherever they falls or go, and if they get the favorable condition, they'll start grow, and that is how the organism grows itself easily by the spore formation. And as the spores are again in 100 in numbers, or we can say that more amount in numbers, more amount of organisms at one time is grown by this process. So that is how spore formation takes place.